June 4th, 1942, at 10:22 hours. The Japanese aircraft carrier Kaga erupts in a series of explosions that lift her 808-foot hull completely out of the water, killing 811 sailors in what becomes the turning point of the Pacific War. What Imperial Navy records never disclosed was that the carrier was not just launching aircraft for the Midway assault. She was secretly transporting Emperor Hirohito's personal surrender terms to be delivered to Washington if the battle failed. For 77 years, naval historians believed the Kaga died as part of Admiral Nagumo's tactical miscalculation during the decisive carrier battle. The wreck, discovered in 2019, tells a radically different story. Evidence scattered across the ocean floor reveals diplomatic pouches and coded communications equipment that had no place aboard a frontline aircraft carrier. Recently declassified foreign ministry documents expose a peace negotiation so secret that even Admiral Yamamoto was unaware of the Kaga's dual mission. What surrender offer was worth risking Japan's most experienced carrier air group? And why did the Emperor choose Midway as the moment to prepare for defeat? The answer lies in Document 7, Emperor Hirohito's personally drafted conditional surrender terms, prepared in absolute secrecy during the spring of 1942. Locked in diplomatic pouches aboard the Kaga were proposals to return all conquered territories to Allied control, while preserving the imperial throne and maintaining Japan's pre-1937 borders. This was not typical military contingency planning. These were direct communications from the Son of Heaven to President Roosevelt, offering immediate peace if American forces would guarantee the survival of the Japanese monarchy. The Emperor had concluded that Japan's early victories were unsustainable, and he chose Midway as the decisive test. If Admiral Nagumo's carriers could destroy the Pacific Fleet, the war would continue. If they failed, Document 7 would provide honorable withdrawal from an unwinnable conflict. Hirohito knew his military leaders would never accept negotiated surrender, so he concealed the diplomatic mission, even from Admiral Yamamoto. The 811 sailors who died with the Kaga were unknowingly protecting Japan's secret path to peace. Foreign Minister Shigenori Togo, one of the few officials aware of Document 7, later wrote in encrypted diary entries that His Majesty recognized the inevitable conclusion by February. The question was not if Japan would negotiate, but when and how to preserve the Kokutai. These diary entries, only declassified in 2021, reveal a stunning alternative history where Imperial Japan recognized its strategic limitations less than 3 months after Pearl Harbor. The document itself was extraordinary in its diplomatic sophistication. Written on specialized rice paper with imperial watermarks, Document 7 outlined a 7-point program for immediate cessation of hostilities. Point 3 specifically acknowledged American naval supremacy, while Point 5 offered immediate withdrawal from the Philippines and all Pacific islands except the Japanese mainland territories. Most critically, Point 7 proposed the maintenance of the imperial system under limited Allied supervision, a concession Japan would not make again until after atomic devastation 3 years later. The path to Document 7 began with Japan's initial victories, which paradoxically revealed to Hirohito the impossibility of long-term success. Naval intelligence reports from December 1941 through February 1942, only recently discovered in Imperial Household Agency archives, show mounting concern about America's industrial capacity. One report dated January 12, 1942, explicitly warned that American shipbuilding will replace Pacific losses at a rate of 5-to-1 by autumn. Hirohito underlined this passage twice in red ink. The Doolittle raid of April 18, 1942 accelerated imperial concerns dramatically. Though causing minimal damage, the psychological impact of American bombers over Tokyo created what palace records termed a fundamental reassessment. Court Chamberlain Hisanori Fujita recorded in his diary that Hirohito asked during an April 20th meeting, if they can reach Tokyo now, what will they achieve in 6 months? The Emperor's question reflected growing recognition that Japan's defensive perimeter was fundamentally compromised. By late April, Emperor Hirohito had convened 3 secret meetings with Foreign Minister Togo, excluding military leadership. Palace attendance records show these meetings lasted between 3 and 5 hours each, extraordinarily long for imperial consultations. During the final meeting on April 29th, Hirohito reportedly said, We must prepare for two outcomes, initiating the drafting process for Document 7. The Emperor's concerns were well-founded. Naval intelligence had accurately assessed American industrial output. By early 1942, U.S. shipyards were producing Essex-class aircraft carriers at a rate of one every 2 months. The Imperial Japanese Navy had no comparable construction capacity. Admiral Osami Nagano privately acknowledged to the throne that Japan could not replace even a single fleet carrier if lost in combat, creating what he termed a mathematical certainty of eventual defeat. The timeline accelerated through May as the Imperial Household Agency created an unprecedented secure diplomatic channel outside military control. On May 12th, Emperor Hirohito approved the final text of Document 7 and wrote in his personal diary that the path of wisdom may require momentary humility. Portions of that diary were only unsealed in 2018. This remarkable admission, coming from a living deity in Japanese tradition, underscores how realistic the imperial assessment had become. May 27th marked the critical decision point, with Admiral Nagumo's carrier force preparing for the Midway operation. Imperial planners identified the Kaga as the optimal vessel for Document 7's transport. Unlike the flagship Akagi, the Kaga would operate in a position allowing potential withdrawal toward neutral waters if the battle turned against Japanese forces. More importantly, her communication suite had been secretly enhanced with diplomatic encryption equipment installed during her April refit at Sasebo Naval Arsenal. The morning of June 4th began with routine combat operations, as Admiral Nagumo's carriers launched their initial strike against Midway Island. Newly uncovered Japanese naval logs show that at 700 hours, Kaga's Captain Jisaku Okada received a coded message from Tokyo marked with the Imperial Chrysanthemum seal, an unprecedented communication to a frontline commander. The message instructed him to prepare diplomatic materials for potential transfer to the destroyer Arashi if American forces were encountered. What followed was the most consequential chain of events in Pacific War history, now reinterpreted through the lens of the diplomatic mission. At 7:28 hours, Japanese scout planes reported no American carriers in the expected position. Nagumo, following standard doctrine, ordered his reserve aircraft prepared for a second strike on Midway, completely unaware of the diplomatic materials now at risk. The fateful decision came at 9:18 hours when Japanese reconnaissance finally spotted American carriers. Nagumo ordered his aircraft armed with torpedoes rather than bombs, a tactical decision that would inadvertently seal Document 7's fate. With Kaga's flight deck crowded with armed and fueled aircraft, the diplomatic officer, Lieutenant Commander Toshikazu Omei, requested emergency measures to protect the foreign ministry materials stored directly beneath. Captain Okada faced an impossible choice: prioritize combat operations or secure the Emperor's secret peace initiative. According to Omei's encrypted report, recovered from Japanese naval archives in 2022, Okada chose to follow standard battle procedure, believing the diplomatic materials were sufficiently protected in their steel-reinforced storage compartment. At 10:22 hours, everything changed. 3 1,000-pound bombs from USS Enterprise's dive bombers struck Kaga's flight deck, precisely where aircraft were being refueled and rearmed. The resulting explosion penetrated 4 decks and directly breached the diplomatic storage compartment. Survivor testimony, only recently translated, says Lieutenant Commander Omei attempted to retrieve Document 7, but he was killed instantly when secondary explosions ripped through the carrier's midsection. The timing proved catastrophic for both military and diplomatic objectives. The diplomatic pouches containing Document 7 were destroyed before they could be transferred to the destroyer Arashi, as contingency plans had specified. By 10:25 hours, as Kaga burned furiously, her radio room managed one final coded transmission to Tokyo, stating that diplomatic materials were compromised and the mission was terminated. That transmission, intercepted by American intelligence but not understood until recent declassification, became the death knell for Japan's secret peace initiative. The destruction of Kaga in Document 7 created a strategic trap from which Imperial Japan would never escape. With the diplomatic option literally sunk to the ocean floor, Emperor Hirohito faced an impossible dilemma: admit he had prepared surrender terms without military knowledge, or commit to continued warfare despite recognizing its futility. Court records indicate he chose the latter. On June 6th, he told his closest advisors that the divine wind must now blow without pause. This decision had catastrophic human consequences. With no diplomatic exit strategy, Japan committed to a strategy of attrition warfare that imperial leadership already knew was mathematically impossible to win. Naval Ministry calculations from July 1942, recently discovered in the diplomatic archives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, showed that Japan would exhaust critical aviation fuel reserves by mid-1943, even without additional territorial losses. The families of Kaga's 811 fallen sailors received traditional notifications that their sons died in service to the emperor. They never knew they had been protecting Japan's secret path to peace. Imperial censors created an elaborate cover story, claiming all diplomatic communications aboard were standard battle plans. This deception extended to the highest levels of military leadership, with even Admiral Yamamoto never learning of the emperor's contingency planning. Most tragically, Allied forces remained completely unaware that they had destroyed Japan's surrender offer. American intelligence analysts, processing intercepted Japanese communications after the Kaga sank, misinterpreted the phrase diplomatic materials as standard naval code for tactical plans. A September 1942 assessment by the Office of Naval Intelligence concluded that reference to diplomatic materials likely indicates fleet coordination documents, completely missing the actual significance. The consequences extended far beyond 1942. With Document 7 destroyed, the diplomatic framework that might have ended the Pacific War was lost. When Japan finally did surrender in 1945, it was under terms far less favorable than those Hirohito had prepared 3 years earlier. The emperor's foresight, had it been implemented in 1942, might have spared millions of lives on both sides, including the civilian populations of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The truth remained buried at 17,000 feet beneath the Pacific until October 18, 2019, when the research vessel Petrel finally located Kaga's wreckage. Initial surveys revealed anomalies that puzzled marine archaeologists. Unlike other Japanese carriers, Kaga contained a reinforced compartment adjacent to the communications center that matched no known design specifications. Remotely operated vehicle camera footage captured fragments of specialized storage containers consistent with diplomatic pouches rather than military equipment. The most significant discovery came during the third remotely operated vehicle dive, when cameras captured the remains of a specialized communications device found only in Japanese diplomatic posts. This TYK3 encoder had no legitimate purpose on a frontline carrier unless the vessel was engaged in diplomatic communications. Dr. Kazuhiro Nakatani of the Japanese Naval History Institute said the presence of a TYK3 aboard Kaga is as unexpected as finding a tea ceremony room on a battleship. It simply does not belong unless the vessel had diplomatic functions. Further investigation yielded partially preserved document fragments. Though severely degraded by 77 years underwater, modern preservation techniques allowed researchers to recover several characters of formal Japanese diplomatic language inconsistent with military communications. One fragment, measuring just 3 by 4 centimeters, contained the imperial chrysanthemum seal, definitively connecting the materials to the highest authority in Japan. The underwater discoveries coincided with a breakthrough in Japanese archives. In 2020, the diplomatic archives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs declassified a series of documents from Foreign Minister Togo's personal files, including preparation notes for a conditional surrender proposal drafted in April to May 1942. These notes align perfectly with the fragments recovered from Kaga's wreckage, providing the documentary evidence connecting the sunken carrier to Japan's secret peace initiative. Perhaps most compelling was the 2021 discovery of Imperial Household Agency records documenting the special communication protocols established between Tokyo and Kaga prior to the Midway operation. These protocols, using encryption systems reserved for diplomatic rather than military communications, created a direct channel between the carrier and the Imperial Palace, bypassing normal naval command structures. According to communication logs, this channel was tested 3 times in late May 1942, confirming its operational status before Kaga sailed for Midway. Forensic analysis of Kaga's wreckage revealed another crucial detail. The diplomatic storage compartment was breached precisely where Enterprise dive bombers struck the carrier. Explosion pattern analysis by naval engineers shows the bombs that doomed Kaga militarily also destroyed the diplomatic materials that represented Japan's secret peace initiative. The physical evidence finally aligned with the documentary record, confirming what historians had missed for decades. The revelation of Document 7 transforms our understanding of Pacific War history. Rather than reflecting Japanese military fanaticism, the evidence reveals an emperor pragmatically preparing for negotiated surrender just 6 months after Pearl Harbor. This fundamentally challenges the narrative that Japan fought blindly without strategic assessment. Military historians now face a profound question. How might the Pacific War have ended if Document 7 had survived? Analysis of its provisions shows terms remarkably similar to those eventually accepted in 1945, but without the devastation of cities like Manila, Okinawa, Tokyo, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki. Conservative estimates suggest over 2 million lives might have been saved had the diplomatic initiative succeeded. The Kaga's dual role as both warship and peace vessel represents a poignant historical irony. Her crew, committed to military victory, unknowingly protected Japan's recognition of inevitable defeat. The 811 sailors who perished with her died in service to peace as much as war, carriers of a diplomatic initiative that died with them beneath the Pacific waves. This discovery also reshapes our understanding of Emperor Hirohito, revealing a pragmatic leader who recognized strategic reality far earlier than previously thought. Rather than the passive figurehead often portrayed in Western histories, Document 7 shows a monarch actively creating diplomatic alternatives while maintaining public support for the military effort. This complex duality challenges simplistic views of imperial leadership during the Pacific conflict. Perhaps most significantly, the Kaga's secret mission illuminates how diplomatic and military initiatives often operate in parallel, sometimes unknown to each other. In modern conflicts, this pattern continues, with military operations proceeding alongside hidden diplomatic channels, each unaware of the other's full scope. The lesson of Document 7 is that history's turning points often occur at these intersections of open warfare and secret diplomacy. The 811 sailors of Kaga deserve to be remembered, not just as casualties of war, but as unknowing protectors of peace. Their sacrifice, carrying both weapons and surrender terms, embodies the tragic complexity of the Pacific conflict. In honoring them, we recognize that even at war's most violent moments, alternative paths to peace often exist just beneath the surface of history. The Kaga's crew died protecting Emperor Hirohito's secret recognition that Japan could not win the Pacific War, carrying surrender terms that could have saved millions. Their sacrifice reveals how diplomatic alternatives often travel alongside weapons of war. This discovery changes everything we thought we knew about the Pacific War's turning point. For more groundbreaking naval history investigations that challenge conventional understanding, subscribe to Ocean Attacks. What other secrets lie hidden beneath the waves, waiting to rewrite history?